We have a very special guest here today. I feel like it needs no introduction. Anybody who listens to this show is probably just as versed as I am in the TV world of ghosts and cryptids and all that. But today we are joined by Mr. Jay Wasley from Ghost Adventures. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, this has been kind of a long time coming. We were supposed to have you on a couple weeks ago, but then we had renovations. But first of all, I just wanted to say I feel kind of bad because you guys kind of caught me at the tail end of like my ghost journey. So I used to watch sci-fi religiously as a kid, and so I was big into Ghost Hunters.
Okay, yeah.
Like Taps and all them, and then Expedition Unknown and Finding Bigfoot and all that. And I remember seeing the original. I want to say it was like an hour-long film.
Right, the original documentary.
Correct. Yeah, I remember seeing that on Sci-Fi, and like I think I was like 10, and it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, what? And like it was creepy because my best friend, my late friend, his mom goes there all the time to Goldfield and does like ghost hunts. If I remember correctly, you were there for that as sound, or were you not
I wasn't there for the documentary.
Okay.
That was before. That was just the three guys. That was before my time. That was before even they had the show. But the documentary is what ended up getting them the show.
Right.
It got a lot of attention. It did well, and then basically turned into a show from there. And then I came on the second year of the show. I think it was 2 years in when I joined the team.
Okay, yeah. So it was definitely because I remember watching occasional episodes here and there, but I think by the time you had joined, I was kind of out of it, but I still tried to.
And I think that's the thing too. Like we've been on for so long now. I mean, I've been with the show 13 years, so it's just funny when I talk to people. They're like, "Oh yeah, we used to watch you guys," and then I haven't watched you in like 10 years. I'm like, "Yeah, we're still going. Like, it's still on."
Yeah, you have a very dedicated fan
100%,
base.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be where we were without them.
Right, 100%. So how did you? We kind of know your story, how you got into Ghost Adventures, but how did you get your start as like a creative? I'm very curious to know about that.
Honestly, I think I was born into it. I think since a child, I was always into, I remember drawing. I remember 5th grade, they had a talent show and everyone's like lip syncing and dancing to like Backstreet Boys or New Kids on the Block, I think it was at the time. Yeah. And then me and my friends were like, nah, we're going to play live Green Jelly's 3 Little Pigs, which like probably no one even knows that anymore, but it was like a metal song. And
right.
Like, so we're in 5th grade at the talent show and come out and bust that out. So I was always playing in bands. And then I think music was probably my first love. I was into art. I loved comic books growing up. I used to draw and make my own comic books, things like that. And I think through music, I remember my parents bought one of those big VHS cameras back in the day and playing in bands. And, this was like the MTV time. I remember coming home from school and watching music videos all day long. And so I was like, oh, I want to make music videos for these terrible bands I was playing in like middle school and early high school. So I just started playing around with a camera and trying to make music videos, things like that. I would take 2 VCRs and I would basically queue up when I'm recorded on one and then play record real quick and then stop and then like fast forward, rewind, find the next cut that I want and then play record again. And that's how I learned to edit, was actually on 2 VCRs. So it was always kind of just like this creative urge, and thankfully I had parents that backed it. They weren't like pushing me to be any kind of certain way or anything like that. And also, it's kind of weird because it was the creative side of me, but then I also had a paranormal side of me too when I was a kid. I was really into, just learning as much as I can about the unknown, whether it was like cryptid stuff or even just religions. Like I wasn't brought up any certain way, so I was kind of studying all of them and just the different beliefs, the different thought processes, the patterns, things like that. And I kind of just started putting together my own theories and own ideas of what's going on. And, and it's all amazing that now like I can do both of those together as a career.
That's what we like almost have like the same upbringing, except I'm much younger than you. Yeah. I couldn't imagine trying to learn. So like I'm an editor by trade. I couldn't imagine trying to learn to edit like that. I'd probably go insane. But yeah, I mean, I started the same way. Like I started with music, played for over 10 years and then kind of fell out of that and then really got into podcasting. And then it's been just, I want to say, George, when did we start our show? 2020?
2020, yeah.
And I think Christian and I had a show 2017 or 2018.
Correct.
So I've been, so I think I've been doing them since about 2017. Okay. But that's, so like I've only ever had one paranormal experience in my life. And it was when I met my now girlfriend and she like, it scared the crap out of me. I'll tell you, cause I don't think you've ever heard it. I know people on the show have heard it, but this was 5-6 years ago. I was home alone. My girlfriend was out. I have a friend who's been on the show numerous times, and he likes to just mess with me when he drives by my house.
Right.
He'll honk and yell at me, and like I won't even hear him most of the time. But I'm in my bedroom, and I thought there was like an earthquake because I hear the door or the window like being pushed.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, but there was like no earthquake. So I run outside and I run around to the side yard, and I'm like, okay, who's there? And I call my friend, and he's like, dude, I'm in like California right now. And I was like,
not even close.
what? And my girlfriend comes home and I tell her, and she's like, all right, I'll call my mom. And her mom comes over with holy water. And but that was like the only real experience I've had. But like I'd grown up watching all of these things, so I was always like kind of keen to it. Like I'm not a big religious person, but I don't think there isn't something. But based on like all of the like religious things that you've found going into what you do now, like how much has that helped you with like your profession now?
I mean, I think simply put, whatever religion you want to believe, like I don't knock anybody. Like if it works for you and it makes you feel good and you can live a good, happy life with it, do it, go for it. But one thing I do know is like there's good and negative energy, like hands down. Like whether that's the devil and God, whether it's, whatever you want to call it. Like I know there's positive and negative energy for sure.
That we literally we had a guy on who has a ghost that follows him. He literally he showed us a video where in every video that he's taken in the last like 3 or 4 years, there's always an orb that flies like in the same trajectory. Right. And so we had a big conversation about that where he was like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a religion. It could just be how like everybody in this room has an energy. Right. And that can be how you...
And that's one way I've kind of described it to people before. Like if you spend your entire life walking up and down the same hallway, when your body dies, it makes sense that a little bit of your energy could still kind of roam that hallway. And under the right variables, the right circumstances, the right equipment, and I think even the right perception with like an open mind, that you can actually capture and perceive some of that and experience it. What still blows my mind, and like we call that like a residual haunting. Like you can go in and there's just, and that's the thing too, like there's like the stone tape theory where like if it's just such like there was like a axe murder happened somewhere, like it's such an intense release of energy that energy literally stains the walls. Any kind of organic surface, it's proven that has a memory, like wood, basically any organic rocks, things like that. They store a memory. And this has been proven multiple times. There's even a Japanese scientist that did a whole experiment with water and positive and negative energy, and it was repeated over and over again. And negative energy would actually change the water, and when you would freeze it, it would make these like disgusting malformed crystals. But then you would project positive energy to it, and you would freeze it, and they would make beautiful symmetrical crystals. So that was just like projection of energy. So you throw in like an axe murder, something brutal, like it makes sense that there's going to be a negative energy kind of stained that location. And you can come in and pick up on that. So that's what we call residual. But what still blows my mind is when we get intelligent communication, which is like takes it a step further, where we go into a place and says like, we use like a spirit box or a digital recorder, and we're like, what did you do here? And we get back like murder or something like, you know what I mean? Like, and It's like, oh shit, like this is actually intelligently communicating. It's not just like a loop. It's not just something that's there floating around that we capture. This is actually interacting with us. And that still completely blows my mind.
That I've never once thought of it that way, and it's never been explained to me that way, but it tracks. It makes sense to me. So going to how you're doing, because I know you guys kind of do like house calls now, right? Yeah. Like you had a thing where, so, my big paranormal experience was always, or like my introduction to it was ghost hunters with taps. Yeah. And like I always found it ironic that like most of the time they were just like, yeah, so you know how you're having like these hallucinations, so you just have like black mold in your basement. Right. How many times have you found that like, okay, there's actually something going on here, or is it just like I did a video on, and I always bring this up, but I did a video on exorcisms. Okay. And a lot of the times, like there is stuff that's unexplained, but a lot of the times it was like Annalise McKell. Uh-huh. So she just had, temporal lobe epilepsy. Okay, and so like it was a medical condition. Yeah. How many times have you found that like there is something unexplainable, or that it's like, it might just be, you're not feeling well?
Yeah, I think every case we still approach skeptically. We don't always just go in and be like, oh, it's always ghosts. Like, we're there to investigate, and our investigation starts as soon as we go in. So like as soon as we start interviewing, that's why we do intensive interviews. We spend time there at the house, with the family, almost sometimes even just observing, seeing what's going on. And it's safe to say, I feel like pretty much all the time, and we back it up by our evidence. Like we're like, okay, it seems like something's going on. We're getting firsthand experiences. Now we need to document it. And then we document evidence. And we're like, okay, we don't believe they're lying. We don't believe they're making it up because we're actually capturing evidence. There was one house one time in Seattle that we did that it was in crazy claims. Like the guy's pair of pants were nailed to the wall and 666 would appear written and like a poster burst into flames and things would fly around the house, really. And we're, of course, to us, we're like, this is amazing. All right, let's go check this out. So we went there and we did an episode and nothing happened. Like absolutely nothing happened. And even today, like, I don't want to say like they made it up. I'm not saying that like, cause I don't know, but we do know. And we approached it the fact that when we were there, nothing happened. And I've seen since then the guy was like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. But I was like, all right, dude, like we were there and nothing happened. Like, what do you want us to do? Like,
I could see like him saying that if he was just like, yeah, occasionally I've heard noises, right. But he's like, no, they nailed my pants to the wall, wrote 666.
Pretty intense claims.
That's unfortunate though, because like maybe he is like actually experiencing something, right. But he might have just sensationalized it to really kind of make you guys come out and be like, okay, look, it's real bad.
There's a whole weird theory too that I've looked into. Sometimes we've encountered on the show a little bit, but like just the fact that like even spirits can take control of somebody and make somebody do things too, where like, maybe like someone is like playing up a haunting in their house, but they're actually being, like coerced to do it, or they're being controlled to do it, or something's influencing their mind that they wouldn't just naturally be doing it themselves. And we've had some cases where you can tell like, all right, like, and maybe it leads to an exorcism where it's like, it's not the house that's haunted, like this person is haunted. And like, maybe they're actually doing these things, but they're not doing it in their right mind. And obviously there's a whole mental health you can go into with it. But there was a case where, we found that where it was like, okay, we narrowed it down. The haunting was to this, a family member. It was the father of the house. And it was almost like movie-esque where like he was starting to be like, like super, and we're like, right. Okay, like, all right, let's see where it goes. And there was a point where I was like, all right, I'm not buying it. Like, this is too played up. It's like if you're watching like The Exorcist, like it was just too intense. But what sold it to me was we actually brought in a bishop to perform an exorcism, and away from him, he was on the couch, and we went in the kitchen, and the bishop blessed a glass of water and basically turning it into holy water. We didn't say anything. He didn't know. The guy of the house didn't know this. We kind of continue. It's just sitting there. We're filming while they're trying to do this exorcism. He's like freaking out, every crucifix touch, everything. And then all of a sudden, he's like choking and just like basically just snotty, and his wife's like crying, like, please, like, like, take a break. And we're like, hey, take a break. Hey, have a glass of water. Like, you need to drink some water. Like, this is intense. And he's like, okay, all right. Like, kind of calms down. And we're like, oh, we'll get you a glass of water. And we bring that glass of water in. He has no idea what we did to it. We give it to his wife. His wife's like, here you go, honey. As soon as it touches his lips, he's like, whoa, like spits it out. He starts throwing up, gagging, and he's like, it's burning my mouth. And I was like, oh, like, okay, like this actually has some credibility, because there's no way. And like, I can't see him just like doing that with just water, you know what I mean? But the fact that it was turned into holy water ahead of time and he had that kind of reaction was pretty wild.
That's got to be insane, because I know, like, and obviously you hear it probably more than I ever do. Like, we just had a guy on who was the online editor for Expedition Unknown and Finding Bigfoot and all that. And he was telling me, he was like, man, don't believe any of that. He's like, but there has to be like, there must be a reason why so many people report ghosts and report these sightings. Like, it can't just, everybody's faking.
Right. Oh, it's been around forever. Like, right. You can go ancient times, there's stories of ghosts. Like, theoretically, Jesus is a ghost story. Like, you think he rose from the dead, like, and was seen and stuff like that. So, I mean, this ghost stories have been told forever, and it makes sense to me. Like I said, with the negative and positive energy, we're all made of energy. So it makes sense that, and based on science, that energy isn't created or destroyed. Like, what is here. So our body dies, our energy is still here. What it actually all does, that's what we still don't know. And that's where all like religion comes in and theories and things like that. And that stuff's hard to prove. I think there's like bits and pieces, you can go in different directions with it. But like I said, the one thing I do know is that there is energy, positive, negative, and we're made of it.
This is like so enlightening for me, because like, I always This channel started a few years ago with my late friend, and we were just doing like video essays on topics. Like we did like the Goat Man, we did Jersey Devil, we did Bigfoot, we did the Patterson Gimlin film. And I always try to make sure that I'm always neutral. I never want to necessarily just go, oh, there's no way,
Right.
because I'm under the aspect of until we have definitive evidence saying it's not,
Right.
we can't say
like,
that.
Who are we to say? Like, we don't know. Like, no one really knows. There could be so much. There is much more, but there could be even so much more where like we can't even comprehend, we can't even process, we can't even imagine what it could be. You know what I mean? Like, you think of like stuff now that we know to be true and regular. 100 years ago, like, I would be locked up for telling the stories of my experiences. You know, like they would throw me in a mental hospital. Be like, oh, you said something grabbed you and dragged you backwards and there was nothing there. Like, oh, you're getting locked up. You know, like
even not even that, but like I dealt with mental health problems. Like I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and really what it came down to was just my environment. Like I worked at a job that was cool at first, and it was really like, it was like a cool thing to say. I got to play video games all day. I was a QA tester.
All right, nice.
Then you find out it's a dead end job. There's a bunch of middle managers, and it just added to this looming fear. But like, you know, now I went to therapy and everyone was like, oh, good for you. But back, 50 years ago, if I was like, I think I'm going to see a therapist, and they're like, we can't have you work here if you're going to see
what's wrong with you?
Yeah. So going to the whole, how you started, because I know you started as like a gig job initially. Did you ever think that it would end up to you being a critical member of the show and being the cinematographer at some point?
Not necessarily. I mean, honestly, it was just a gig at first. I was originally just the sound guy, and I was like, okay, this is just another gig. But it was different right away. Like, I knew it was a different show because there isn't a big crew. It's not produced like even now, like we do whatever we want. There's no one telling us like, oh, do this or redo that or say it this way or do that. Like, it's literally us choosing everything we do. We have full creative control. And I remember at that time I worked on a lot of TV shows. I worked, as a crew guy, and I always remembered watching a show, like, I don't know, like typical stupid reality show type stuff.
Jersey Shore, yep.
And like you would watch it and I would be like, wait, that's not really what happened. Like, and I remember as a crew guy first joining Ghost Adventures, when I first saw that first episode I worked on come out, I was like, okay, this is legit. Like, this is what happened. Like this. And I think we've always approached it. They've always approached it that way. And we still approach it as actually just like raw documentary. We don't set things up. We're not trying to like, make a big thing. It's literally on the fly. Like, we figure out things as we go and, approach it like a raw documentary.
That's so refreshing though, because I know everything now in reality TV is just 100% staged. Like, at my last job, I had an HR manager who was a producer in Hollywood. And he said, literally looked everybody in my training class. He goes, anybody in Hollywood tells you on a TV show that it's real, it is not. He's like, I'm telling you, it's 100% fake. But there's always been like kind of like an aura around Ghost Adventures that like, even like production people are like, like people that haven't worked on it going, I don't think that's fake.
Right. And I think it is like, and I think that is kind of like why we've stood the test of time too, and why we're, filming season 26 or whatever. It's been mixed up. I forget exactly.
That's crazy though.
There's so many different weird divisions, how it's divided up. But like, I think it's because of that. I think it's because it's true to who we are. It's true to what we do, and we've been able to keep that vision and that creativeness and and the passion too. And like, this is our lives. Like, it's not just a TV show. Like, we don't all just come home and we're like, oh, like, like we live this all the time. We've all had things come home with us. We've all had experiences at home. I've seen the guys go up and down, and they've seen me go up and down. Zach has the museum. Like, it's not like we turn it off or we clock out and it's over. Like, it's our life, literally.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like what I tell people here being a producer now. It's like I traded in my 9 to 5 for 24/7.
Exactly.
It's kind of what you do, but it's not just okay, I'm going to turn my phone off and work's leaving me. It's like, now I got to, there's an aura around me. There's like an an energy that I can't shake.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you come home and it's like, all right, I can't just relax because there's like a tension. There's, some kind of negative energy, and even just dealing with this stuff. Like, I've kind of like developed my own way to kind of leave it in a way. And that's the problem too, because we want to open up. So we want to be able to experience these things, but then I want to be able to stop it and not come home, and, I think over the years I've kind of developed that. And I think that's what we wanted to do with House Calls too, is to kind of like share that and try to help people that are dealing with negative, attachments or hauntings at their own home, kind of learn what we've learned, and help teach them.
That's really cool that you guys are doing that, because there's a lot of people that, like me, for example, I wouldn't know what to, like when my girlfriend was like, let's bring holy water over. I was like, that works? Yeah. That's something you do?
And I think, and honestly, and I don't think there is just one certain way. And I think to kind of sum it up, loosely, is like whatever works for you. If you are religious, holy water will work. Crucifixes work. If you're not religious, you don't believe in that at all, it's not going to work for you. You know what I mean? So I think it's finding whatever you truly believe in. For me personally, like when I get home and if I feel like I have like I'm affected, like there's just this negative energy looming on me, I go hiking, I go out in nature, I'll play music, I'll make sure like, no, I need to create, I need to stay creative, I need to, just go and jam, play some music, or even just listen to music and just blast it. And, like I said, spend time in nature, hiking around, like find something that, grounds you and makes you feel positive.
It's very, very, good take, because a lot of people just don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. But so kind of branching away from ghosts, because you are obviously like, there has to be, and I'm not saying you have the definitive answer of like ghosts are real, ghosts are not real. It's a very like, there's things that we cannot quite explain. So how do you feel about things like Bigfoot? Because we've had a guy on who said he was on the show and said he's been researching Sasquatch in Colorado for 30 years.
Right.
And he sent me pictures. I'll show you after the show. He sent me pictures and stuff. But some of the stuff, it was just like, okay, everything was credible. And then you say something so outlandish, it kind of throws everything off.
That's the tough too with like Bigfoot, even aliens. Like, and don't matter, like I'm a believer, but like the things you see are like, all right, it's always a little blurry. It's always like
everybody's on an Android.
There's no definitive, like, oh, yep, clear as day. Like that's it. So it's tough to say. But like kind of we were saying earlier, like who are we to say that they're not? It makes sense. Like, humans have only been on this planet for so long. So who's not to say there's some other creatures that are out in the wilderness, like I think over time we're reaching out, we're kind of, spreading to every inch of this planet. And I think we might notice even more, and I think there are like nooks and little spots left in the world where theoretically, creatures like a Bigfoot or Nessie or anything could actually just still be living, like where like thousands and thousands of years ago, there were tons of them and they were everywhere. And we would walk outside and be like, oh, there's Bigfoot again. Like, you would see deer in the mountains or something now. But just over time, they've dwindled down into like a few. Like, that makes sense to me. It doesn't necessarily have to be so mythical and things like that.
Right.
I do like the mythical aspect of those things, like there's a whole thing of like elementals, which cover like, leprechauns and fairies. And I guess even Bigfoot in a while too. They're saying that's one reason why like it's hard to catch them, because they can like go into like cross dimensions.
Yeah, he told us he literally saw one open up a zipper in reality and step through.
But what's interesting is like you go back in time and like especially like Native Americans and you go through the history, they have these legends of creatures that would. We were out in Catalina Island and there's a whole thing of like these giant creatures that would guard these doors that were apparently like portals to like other dimensions or wherever they would go, but they were like guarded by these creatures that are kind of like just hidden in nature now, and that
are lying dormant, waiting to be awoken.
But like, and that's the thing. But there's a reason for it. Like, is it exactly that? Probably not. But there's a reason these native cultures thought that, or wrote about it. And not just wrote about it once. Like they passed it down. Like this is important information to know.
That's everything you're saying is like everything I've kind of been saying on here, but it's just, I don't know, it just has a little bit more credibility. So moving on, like I told you before the show, for everybody listening, I went and asked the community. I put out a thing and I said, I'm having Jay on from Ghost Avengers. I want to ask him your questions. And the amount of support you got is insane. Like you know better than I do. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you some fan questions. Okay. So this first one comes from one of our producers, Francisco. He goes, how do you feel about the Warrens' legitimacy, about how it's been questioned in recent times, even with the Conjuring and the Annabelle films?
Right. I mean, I don't know enough personally about them, honestly. That's one thing, like being in the paranormal, I don't dive too much into other people in the paranormal. And I think I do that, one, because I want to make sure my thoughts and my approaches are true to me. I don't want to like overly see things and kind of like change my style or change my thought patterns. So I'm not too familiar, but I know who they are and things like that. the movies, I mean, the movies are movies. Like, they're over dramatized. They're made up, fully. They're based on like a, smidgen of truth or something that happened, and then they blow it up for film purposes. We got to investigate the Conjuring house that actually inspired the original film. And the Warrens were there. They were trying to help this family. Like, I believe they were legitimate, trying to help people and trying to investigate. I haven't seen anything to make it seem like a reason why they would be, scamming people in a way, or any reason for that. Like, they seem like they were legitimately trying to help people. We talked to one of the daughter from the original Conjuring family, and she remembers them coming there. And, in a way, if I remember correctly, they were saying like they kind of felt they might have made it worse because they were like trying to draw it out and figure out things. So there was
antagonized
right.
it.
So there was like maybe a little bit of negativity there. So yeah, I mean, I think, they've done a lot of work, and I appreciate and I respect them, I think, for what they've done too in the paranormal field. They were kind of like early trailblazers that have like set the stage for, like even during their time, like this isn't something people talk about, like if you have a ghost in your house, you're like, all right, I'm not telling anybody. And, now people share these stories, so I think they were, with them and, other early paranormal investigators, like they've set that, precedence. It's like, we can talk about this. Like, it's okay. A lot of people are experiencing these things.
Perfect. All right. So our next question comes from our associate producer who you just met, Lana. She goes, what was your favorite ghost hunt and why?
I mean,
probably a loaded question,
yeah.
huh?
It's always tough. Like, I get it asked a lot, honestly, but like, it's a tough one because we've done hundreds at this point. There's some that stick out. So I kind of break it down in a couple categories. Like, I think places, Romania was probably one of my favorite places we've ever been. Dracula's castle, things like that. Not necessarily from investigation, but like just places we've been. It's just that always stands out. We did a special called Netherworld that we went into the catacombs under Paris.
Oh, okay.
That was another, not necessarily on the paranormal crazy level, but like just, there was a point where I'm literally in a cave 300 feet below a cemetery in a mass grave from the plague times, and there's no floor. It's just filled with human bones, and you're just like
it's like
waiting,
an Indiana Jones film.
like wading through. So like that was like a most surreal place. And then there's different ones that are like fun and but like one that always sticks out to me was this saloon in Prescott, Arizona, where the workers there, it was still in operation, and the workers there were saying there was some kind of evil entity in the basement, and there was a crawl space opening, like really broken into the wall. And they were like, they always felt like that's where it came from. Like that's where this entity resided, and that's where it would come out. So I got the short straw and got to spend the night crawling into the crawl space by myself. And I was crawling through it, and nothing was happening. So I was kind of like, all right, this is a bully spirit, so I'm going to kind of try to call it out. Like if we're investigating and it's like a spirit of a little girl, like we're not going to call it out. We're not going to antagonize. But this was like supposedly a bully spirit, so I'm going to antagonize. And I started calling it out. And then I felt something grab my leg, and I'm on my belly, and I have my camera like this, like crawling through the crawl space, and something grabs my leg. I start kicking. It's just getting dusty. I drop the camera, and I actually get dragged backwards away from my camera, like a good 3 or 4 feet. And you could see on camera, I get dragged away. You could see there's nothing behind me. And I just lost my mind because I'm just being moved, and I'm in a crawl space. So it's only like that. So I can't just jump up and run away. So I'm kind of freaking out. And like this point I'm kicking, it's all dirt and dusty, and just totally lost my mind. And then all of a sudden I heard Aaron came running because he heard me yelling, and I could see his light like way off where I first crawled in. And then I just tried to make my way, and I made my way out. And then first thing too, like, which is kind of a weird thing that people don't realize too with the show, is that we have those experiences, and then while it's happening, you have a camera in your face, like, what's going on?
Yep.
And it's like, whoa, hold on. I need to make sure I'm alive first, and before I try to explain what was just going on. But that was probably one of the craziest, like, personal experiences. When a spirit actually can physically move you, that's something that just
Yeah,
that was a whole other level.
it's got to be terrifying.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to move on to our Reddit questions now. So we have That Somo 2020 asks, can you describe some of the most challenging investigations you've been on and how you dealt with the experience?
Challenging. I mean, they're all challenging in ways. There's challenging. Honestly, probably one of the most challenging is, and this isn't just a plug, but our premiere episode on May 31st is we did a 2-hour special on Lake Mead. And I'm sure being in Vegas, you're aware of the bodies and barrels.
We've had a show here that's offered up. You might have seen the $5,000 reward for the bodies. That was done here.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did a 2-hour special on it, and that's what's going to launch on Discovery on May 31st. And that Lake Mead isn't the easiest place to get around. And there's an area like a lot of the water's going down, obviously. Mm-hmm. So like originally we're like, oh, we could take boats here. And there was one spot where there was a lot of occult activity, like literally like off grid, middle of nowhere. And we ended up having to drive up to Mesquite, which is like way up technically in Arizona. It's weird, Arizona and then Utah, like that weird part. Mm-hmm. And then we took about a 2-hour ATV ride. So we had 2 ATVs. We had to load it with everything we think we're going to need and literally rode. And we shot this maybe in November or December. So it was freezing cold, just cruising open air in the night, like trying to get to this evil devil's like occult place literally in the middle of nowhere. So that was very challenging. Just the logistical challenge of it is like trying to get out there. So that happens a lot, like our logistical challenges. Like we try to do these places that are like literally in the middle of nowhere, and then we're like, oh man,
it's am I going to power this nowhere. FX6 that takes 3 batteries?
Like, and we've done it. Like we're, all my lights, cameras, everything's all battery operated now. So like we sometimes will bring a generator just in case if we need to. But most of the time we just go with battery stuff when we have to. But I think that's honestly one of the biggest challenges, is just because there's no consistency. There's no like, this is what it is and we do this. Like every single episode is a new set of challenges, a new set of logistical challenges, a new set of spiritual challenges. Like it's always changing and, always makes it a puzzle.
So kind of branching from that then, if you're able to explain like what kind of is the process like for each episode, like do you kind of have like a okay, this is what we're thinking we're going to do. We're going to go to this location. We kind of have this base knowledge. And then you guys kind of meet and go, okay, what do we need production wise?
Production, we kind of just have the kit now where we've developed and just kind of, we probably technically have more than we need, but like I'd rather have too much.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's still not a lot. Like from working in production, like our kit of equipment is, besides like Ghost specialty gear, like our actual filming equipment is very little and minimum compared to what you would have on like a bigger, production kind of setup. But I think it's like, we kind of break it down into roughly 3 days. And like I said, they're all different, so they all kind of change. But usually the first day we'll focus on interviews. And before we get out there, like we'll basically get like a little write-up of like, here's the history. Like here's just, kind of like the basic Wikipedia-based kind of history. We do have a researcher, Jeff Blanger, who will write up and do like dig in a little deeper. So we'll get little tidbits of cool, like little information for us to kind of go into it knowing this stuff. And then from there, that's it. And then we basically know like, oh, we have these 4 people that we're going to interview, and that's it. And then we show up and we just go, we're kind of like, all right, you're here. We can start interviewing you, but then something might happen. And we might just, we just did an investigation a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, where we basically introed the interview. We started talking to them, and then all of a sudden, like something happened paranormal, and it just like, we literally ran away from them, and we were probably gone from them for like 2 hours, like basically following this like paranormal trail, like of things happening. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh wait, we were just doing that interview. Like we got to get back there, They're
like, what happened to you? Like, sorry, my bad. Right. When duty calls.
Right. Exactly. So there's always that room for kind of whatever happens, like we go with it. And then, but we kind of focus more on that the first day. And then from there, we'll kind of get an idea of like the main stories and things like that. And then the second day is just for like reenactments and B-roll, like that kind of stuff. And then the third day, we'll kind of shoot, I guess, like in show terms, like act 2 of the show, where it's kind of like, it's not quite the investigation yet, but like maybe we're putting together our plan, and like we show all that, like we show us as we are, like, all right, how are we going to tackle this? And then we'll be like, all right, let's meet up and plan it out, and then we'll film that as well. Sometimes we'll go over things that we caught during the interviews and be like, wow, like there's actually evidence happened while during the interview or something like that, or whatever we come up with, we'll find something, even if it's more research and we dig deeper into the history, things like that. And then we go into the lockdown from there.
That's wild. Yeah, because I recently started doing production stuff when I started working here, being a videographer and understanding like, okay, like, it's not just so you just show up and start filming. There is some planning behind it, but I've always been curious about like, do they just show up to the building and just start going for it?
Start going. It's kind of crazy sometimes. Like it can be hectic. It can be like, wait, what's going on? But we do it and it works, and we just flow with it. And, we get there and we're like, all right, we start looking around. We're like, all right, let's go over here. And, if we are doing more like intros and, kind of like stylized stuff, but even in the middle of that, we might hear something or someone might be affected or something happens, and we just, whatever happens, we're documenting it along the way.
It's crazy. So this person left a question, but then deleted their Reddit account. So it's deleted user. Do you remember a time when you were the most terrified, like as though your life was in danger from the paranormal? I feel like you might have explained that with being dragged.
Yeah, I think being dragged was definitely one of them. Trying to think, like I've been scratched before. There was a place called the Sally House I think it's in Kansas. And it was like weird because it was notoriously known for being like people being scratched. And I was in there filming, and it was during the interviews, and I'm standing there like this, didn't bump anything, I know I'm good. And all of a sudden my arm just started burning, and I pull up my hoodie, and you just see this scratch, and you see it like just getting redder and appearing like on camera too. But in a weird way, I didn't feel my life was in danger necessarily. Maybe I should be a little more cautious with this stuff. There's definitely times, we investigated in the Hollywood Hills, Holly Madison's house, and I had no idea at the time, but I was investigating her backyard, like in the hills, because there's a lot of like history with Native Americans, and like, there was like a lot of claims of energy back there. So while they're in the nice house, I'm out in the yard climbing up the hill investigating there, and there was a point where I saw something come out of the darkness. It was just like more darkness coming out of the darkness, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. And it scared me, and I kind of like stepped back, but I'm on top of a hill. So as I stepped back, I lost my footing, and I literally started rolling, and I bounced, going through cactuses, hitting trees. There was like cinder blocks sticking out. I broke a rib, and my leg wrapped around a tree and stopped me from basically falling off a cliff like about 30, 40 feet down into a road. So that was definitely
I would say so.
Right. And so that was the end of my investigation that night, and that was definitely like broken rib on that one. Get home, Billy from the show, he actually goes through all the evidence. So when we're done, he takes all the footage, he goes home, he spends the next few days like basically scouring the footage, going through it for evidence. And he's like, Jay, you got to see this. And I'm like, what? And he sends me some clips. The entire time I'm out there, you see me, I walk by a camera, big, huge mountain lion starts walking behind me. Or no, sorry, it wasn't a mountain, it was a bobcat actually. But still, it was big enough for me to be like, oh shit, like, all right. So like I was literally being stalked by this bobcat the entire night. You see it following me around, and I ended up falling and breaking a rib. And I've like ripped open my back on investigation. That was Aaron's fault, but he like freaked out. When you get scared in the dark, you bump into things a lot.
Right.
I've fallen downstairs. My arm and hand has gone through a door before.
See, people, several of the questions were like, why does he fall so much?
Yeah. We film in the pitch black. Like, try doing your podcast here with no light at all, and just be like, all right, we got to move around. And then all of a sudden you get scared and you might jump a little bit. Like, you're going to bump into things. You're going to fall down. You're going to trip. And I think there's, sometimes I'm like, yeah, maybe I should be a little more like cautious, but I think that's part of the investigation. You get this rush, there's a thrill, there's an adrenaline rush with it that like you just go and, and all of a sudden you're like, you're going and then you're like, yeah, you're on the ground and you're hurting.
Your life insurance policy must be crazy, huh? They're like, you do what?
Right.
You go and hunt ghosts? Like, right. George, what would you put on that
right.
policy?
Oh, geez, so expensive, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just coming over. I've dislocated my ankle about a month ago.
Yeah, I saw a recent interview when you were in a boot, and I was like, oh man, what happened?
I got a brace on there, but it's getting better. It's I was investigating in these woods in Utah by myself and had it hasn't aired, so I can't go too much into it yet, but like there was craziness that happened. And it caused me to once again run around in the dark and kind of get messed up, and that hurt my ankle. It was definitely sore. My knee, my ankle was really sore afterwards. And then a couple weeks later, I was at my studio and I just stepped and it just totally gave out and just totally dislocated.
Well, at least it was, in the comfort of your own studio, not out in the woods by yourself. But man, all right. So this next one is from Vampire Dame. Says, what types of kinds of psychic protection protocols do you personally follow prior to investigations to avoid possible attachments?
I mean, beforehand, kind of none. I like to go into it completely open and vulnerable, I guess. Afterwards, I'll try to do things. And I guess beforehand, too, I do have, my home is very protected. I've done things at my home, just with energy and, crystals. And Palo Santo is a big one, burning Palo Santo. I think has a really nice positive effect on energies.
What is that? I've heard of burning sage. We've done it here.
It's very similar to sage, but it's actually a stick. It's like a wooden stick.
Okay.
I think it's from South America. And you basically same thing. You light it on fire, you let it go, you blow it out, and you kind of smudge around. But it's just a different scent. It's called holy wood, Palo Santo. But I feel that has a better reaction than just straight sage does. So things like that. I try to keep my home a positive place. And then I go out on the road completely open. And then afterwards, I'll try to basically before I leave, it clear my mind. If I feel anything's lingering, I'll try to basically stop it there. And I tell people all the time, even in house calls, whatever it is, you might be affected, even if you're affected by a demon or the worst thing you could think of. I still believe that in this world, in our reality, we have control. But these entities, they break down our comfort. They break down our minds. They break down, they make us feel like we are helpless, and then that lets them even dig in even deeper. So I think kind of holding your ground in a way and kind of just being no, you're not going to come home with me. And it sounds crazy, but literally speaking it out loud and manifesting those thoughts and that energy and just be no, you're stopped here and kind of go from there.
That's the obvious. So I'm assuming you live here now.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Mob Museum?
Yeah.
So I worked there right out of high school. Okay. And there were for sure paranormal.
Oh yeah. We investigated the massacre wall in there.
Oh okay. Yeah.
Just for a little bit we did there before.
Yeah. So a couple of the other employees, they showed me CCTV. So I don't know if you remember in the top floor they have the old Vegas, they have the gambling room.
Yeah.
So somebody was going to sit in the chair, and you watch the chair just get ripped out from under him, and there's nobody there. And one of the girls who I was working with, and I was like, "There's something off about her." And she told me, my person told me I have to tell the ghost to stay here and not to follow me home. And at the time, I was like, "You have to do what?"
Right. It sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, but then hearing about it and then having an encounter, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'd want that stuff following.
Right. Yeah.
Following me.
Yeah, and I think it's a thing of just self manifestation. Right. If you want something, if you will it, I think you can do it. And I think people have that ability. Whether it is even if you're not in paranormal, if you're a successful business person or an athlete, you talk to all those people and they all have that same manifestation willing. And I'm not trying to get all into that whole manifestation theory, but there is something to being determined and being no, I know, my mind is strong on knowing that this is what it's going to be like. And I think that helps in the paranormal world. Just being no, I'm not going to let that break me down and get in there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being confident. I've learned from having a show and being producers for shows and getting back into physical fitness and everything, just speaking it out loud. You know what, I'm gonna, so I started doing jujitsu, And like I wrestled in high school, but it translates, but not really. And so I'm getting my ass beat 3 times a week. Like I went this morning and I was like, oh man, like I was feeling a little anxious about today. And I was like, I'm going to go sweat it out and I'm going to feel better. And sure enough, did it, rolled, got messed up by my training partner. But at the end I was like, like it feels good. And I, went in here knowing that like, I'm not going to be the best. I'm going to come in here getting humbled. And I felt better coming out of it than I did going into it. So I think it's what you're saying is like the same thing. It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to just be about paranormal. Right. It could be like, I think I'm going to have a great podcast, or I think I'm going to have a great day at work.
Yeah. And I think that carries on, like even, if you think like positivity, or even just going back to energy is contagious. Like when I first walked in here, like if for whatever reason I was having a bad day and you were like, oh, hey Jay, nice to meet you. And I'm just like, hey man, whatever. Like,
another fan.
You would kind of be like, oh, okay. And then you go in the back and then someone's like, hey man. And you're like, well, like it keeps going. You know what I mean? Or I've used like the example of like, you're walking to a coffee shop and you're about to grab the door and someone like, the person cuts in front of you and shuts the door and doesn't hold it. And it's all that awkward. Like, oh,
I do that,
and like, you could get pissed off, but like, and then you go up to the counter, now you're pissed. And then the person's like messes up your order, gets it wrong. And now you're giving them an attitude, and then they get an attitude, and then they go home, and then it just keeps going. And I think it's the same thing with positivity. If like, that person that, ends up like, shutting the door on you, and you'd be like, oh, it's okay, sorry. And then, you project positive energy to them, and then it'll make them feel a little better, and then they will pass it on, and it keeps going from there. So I think that's all still in that like mindset, that positivity, and, I guess manifestation would be the term, I guess, but.
Yeah, it's just pay it forward almost.
Right,
you get what you give.
Yeah.
So this is from I'm Tiflish24 says, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of being on the show?
I don't know. I think they kind of sometimes can blend together, because I love being able to explore the paranormal. I love being on the road and being able to travel. I love being able to work with basically like my brothers and like best friends and be able to do what we love to do, over and over again. So those elements are always good. But then also they could also be a pain, traveling sometimes is rough. Brutal. We're going every other week. And that's the thing too. A lot of shows, they'll film a season in like a couple months. So like, just be like, all right, we're going to knock out the whole season. And then, 2-3 months. And then the rest of the year is down. Our show, we shoot every other week. Like
just continuously.
Wow. With me, 13 years now. Like the thing that shows 15 years. So like, it's been like that the entire time. So there is no break. There's no time to like shut down, so the traveling, like I love traveling, I still do, but like, and like, it depends. And like after COVID, we started driving a little more just to be able to get out and, during that time. So it's kind of stuck where like we drive a little more and, but like, it was tough, especially like I was originally from the East Coast. So like I would fly all the time, and it was always like cross the country flights, because we do a lot of West Coast stuff. So it was always like, so that got really, after a while, like, basically bi-weekly of always like, and then dealing with airports and TSA and going through that and losing luggage and
your mileage must be high though, right?
Oh yeah, not anymore. It's dropped down. I was definitely a Diamond member for a while with Delta, but
that kind of wore off.
Yeah. So I mean that I think that's tough, the strain of it. And then I think even though I love that we're always doing it, it's sometimes tough because there's no real time to recoup. It's kind of like, all right, we get home, we have a few days, you do some laundry, you're kind of like still processing maybe what happened, you have a few days, and then it's like, all right, you have like a few days of life, and then it's like, all right, we got to start prepping, look over the notes, kind of get the history of what's going on, and then we're right back out, so there's no time to really, I don't know, like it's weird. It's even like, that's why one reason I love doing these podcasts, because it even reminds me of like, oh yeah, this happened, and like different stories from the past, where normally it's like, sometimes I'm like, man, I can't remember where we filmed last week.
Yeah, it's just a blur. It's just, that's kind of how it is here now, where I'm like, what did I do?
Right, you do so
week?
many.
Yeah.
It's like,
and not even just my show. Like I produce, in the double digits of shows, and so it's sometimes it's like I have to look at my calendar and be like, oh right, this person's coming in at this time, and they're bringing this guest, and I need to have this done. So it's like, it for you more so because it's like you want to go in on your on your best note into these scenarios. You don't want to be going in with bad energy from the start. You want to go in and with like a high note almost.
Yeah, I think it's with that the same thing with the idea of like coming in with positive energy and keeping yourself safe. And I've seen it. I've seen it with all of us. I'm sure we've had times where like for whatever personal reasons, our life, we had a bad week or our flight was bad, and you go into the investigation already kind of like pissed off a little bit. Like that's going to have an effect, and like unfortunately, most of the time, it's going to have a negative effect.
It's so crazy just to hear this aspect, because we all, we're separated by a TV. It's just like, I'm seeing this. I know who you are. You don't know who I am, but I think I know everything. And then there's a whole other layer that people aren't aware about. So let's jump into this next one. This is a great name. It's called Kicking Younglings. It says, have there been pieces of evidence that felt too good to be true because of the consistency and quality? So I think they meant like maybe like somebody's presenting something to you guys.
Right. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm always still skeptic on everything. Like, especially like if it's not something we captured, like, we've done conventions and people are like, oh, check this out. Even online, people are like, oh, look at this. Like we call it this or listen to this. And I'm still always skeptical because it's hard to know, not being there,
Right.
And that's the thing. Like I can legitimately say like I'm there, and besides documenting this stuff, like I witness these things. So I know for a fact it's real. Where like if I watch other people's stuff, it's like, I don't know. I'm not there. I can enjoy it. I can look at it and kind of like give my opinion on if it's legit or not. But like at the end of the day, who knows?
Very nice. So Renewal asks, if ever given full access, where would you like to investigate and why?
There's a few. I think one would definitely be the suicide forest.
Oh, for sure. I would definitely. That's what got me into Vice.
Oh, really? Okay.
Was the Vice
when
special on it.
Yeah, that was
and
great.
That was like 10, 15 years. And that's what kickstarted my whole like
right
journey into like, wow, Vice is pretty cool. I mean, now they're kind of okay.
Yeah.
But like their war journalism stuff was
so
insane.
Good.
So, okay. So Suicide Forest for sure.
Forest would definitely be one. And then I forget the name of it, but there's a chapel in the Czech Republic that is entirely made out of human bones. I forget the name of it, but it's literally this beautiful like chapel, and it's all made out of bones. Like I'm sure if you Google it, you could find it, but I've always wanted to go there.
That sounds crazy. Like in the best way though. Like it's disgusting and terrible.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm 100% intrigued.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I don't know, there's like a weird, maybe it's just me, but like I find like there's a weird beauty in death, like it doesn't freak me out. Like I have like a human skull. Like I have different weird memorabilia and things like that where like a lot of people are like, oh, it's so weird or creeped out or, but I look at it as like, you know what, this was a person. This has a story to it. Like whether it was like a big famous story or not, like it has its own story. And that's what gets me. I love stories. I love history. I love, the uniqueness of every single individual on this planet. And like, we all have our own story. So like having those little things, like, I don't know, shows some kind of respect and homage to them. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you could, because you could be like, I found you interesting enough that like this means something to me to hold on to. It's not just it's not a bone that I'm stepping on in the catacombs that is just one in a million.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I mean, one of those would probably be cool too, but I couldn't imagine what that.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever get that on the plane.
Trying to go through customs, like, what do you have here?
Tear me apart with that.
It's fake, I promise. And they're like,
like it's mine.
This leg is what it came out of. It's all metal now. So this is the last question from the viewers. This is from Abject Disaster. It says, is there a sense of needing to find something during a hunt? And if so, how big is that looming sense?
I won't say there's a needing. There's definitely a want. That's what we're there for. That's the desire. That's the holy grail, is to get that, like, that one, there's always that search for that one piece of evidence that, like, hands down, like, every person would be like, oh my God, like, because there's being on TV, like, there's always going to be critics. There's always people that question it. So like, there's always that like idea of like, man, it would be so good just to get that one thing that shuts everybody up, like just like, this is it, hands down. So I think that's one thing, maybe like always like trying to like push it, but then also we're always trying to push our means and how we get there. We don't just stick to one routine the whole time, one piece of equipment. We're always trying new equipment. We're always researching, trying to find, new, styles and new technology. We're always trying to push the limit. And to bring back to the Lake Mead special, Billy actually went out and bought a crazy LiDAR system. And we've been getting crazy evidence with that, like doing this like full crazy LiDAR scans of these places. And then you start seeing these anomalies that appear where like it's an empty room, but there's something in there. You know what I mean? So I think it's that. It's always just trying to push and just try to evolve too and just keep going, do whatever we can.
I think that question came up because, I mean, hopefully now they'll watch this and they'll know that like there's not some overarching producer that's like, we got to deliver to now Discovery. We got to deliver to Discovery. I'm assuming Discovery probably understands that like, we're going to let you guys do your thing because obviously it's been successful for so long.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I don't know, but I guess like we're there for a reason and, you know, nothing's changed. Like we're still doing what we do. Like, you know, and I think it is just our natural passion, our desire, like kind of mentioned earlier, like we live this, like we want this, like this isn't just clock in, film, clock out. Like we're dedicated. We love what we do. And even though it can be scary and physically harming and all that kind of stuff, but like we're so deep into it where it's like, no, this is what we are. This is what we're going to do.
Perfect. Before we go, George, is there anything you wanted to ask? Because you've been on almost every single Bizarre Junkies episode.
I always ask this to all the guests, so it's just nothing special here, but are you a drug guy?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've experimented in younger years, you know, and I've researched a lot, like, you know, the theories of things like shamanism, things like that, where like using psychedelics have been able to open up people's thoughts and be able to like communicate with alternate realities or spiritual planes, things like that. Definitely. So like I'm aware of that kind of stuff. Haven't necessarily had that full spiritual kind of experience in that sense.
Okay.
But I could see it being a pathway.
I was going to wonder like if there's anybody on set that you know that, you know, they could be connecting like past drug like experiences to what they've experienced paranormally.
I mean, we've had stuff where, you know, I remember there was a point where we were investigating the Bell Witch Cave and I used frequencies and I basically blasted the cave with infrasound, which is basically real quick, like sound frequencies that are outside of our hearing range. And we had cameras set up in there and we were all outside the cave and I was blasting this frequency in there and all of a sudden on camera and we could hear it through the audio, like rocks started going flying, things started moving, these little light anomalies started shooting around when I played these infrasounds. And then we stopped it and then we all went in to investigate. And when we went in, we were all like, whoa, like this is like, this feels like a psychedelic, like we're out of our mind, like something, like it honestly felt like we walked through a portal in a sense. And we were kind of like, all right, this isn't our normal reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. Cause I mean, I'm drug guy. So like, I always think that if I do have a paranormal experience, it'll relate somewhat similarly to what I've felt.
Well, I think too, we did actually get dosed once, which is in an episode.
Okay.
We were out filming on Navajo land out in New Mexico. And there was like these caves. And before we were doing the investigation, Navajo medicine woman came up to us like outside of a place and was like, I would love to be able to do a ritual for you guys to kind of like give you the protection and things before you go and do an investigate. So we're like, sure. So we went out, we're standing in the middle of the desert and this shaman woman's painting our faces, doing the ritual thing. And we're like, okay. And then all of a sudden I'm standing there and there's this finger just like right into my mouth. And it's like a wad of herbs. I'm like, oh, what? Like one, I was like, that's kind of gross. And I'm just like, what was that? That was weird. And then, you know, and I looked down and I was the first one in line. So I got it first. And then I think they were like, okay, thank you. Like,
it's like COVID testing,
you know? And then at the end, she says like, oh, this will help you see the spirits. And in the moment, we're just like, whatever, like not even thinking. And then we finished filming and then it was like, all right, we have about half hour before it really gets dark and we, you know, need to start prepping for the investigation. And then we're all standing there, we're all like kind of like looking at each other like, whoa, like you all right? Like you feel like, and then we're all like, oh shit, like we think she dosed it. You know? And then we ended up like literally like driving around in a circle in the middle of the desert. Like when we have it on the show, like we filmed ourselves on our cameras and we're just laughing and just basically.
I
like,
love that. That's
driving
awesome.
around in the desert, and like we waited. It didn't last long. I think it was. I'm not sure exactly. Our production manager called her afterwards the next day and was like, "What did you do?" Like,
She's
you know, like,
dude, give him
which like luckily we were all
ate the
fine, but
shrooms.
like, if we didn't know like at all, or like who knows, like if someone was like recovering, like you just can't just
Be
do that to
shoving
somebody.
herbs
She
in
tried to
people's-
Joey Diaz them. I gave him a
Right.
500 and told him it was a 100 milligram
Right.
edible.
Just
But
eat
yeah,
Joe
I
Rogan.
think she said it was like something called like devil's weed or something.
Oh fuck!
Like, so I don't even know exactly what it was, but it didn't last too long. It
Just
lasted
send me
like,
your number.
Yeah, we'll let you know how we feel on it.
Yeah.
So you've been on Native American land. Like, how do you feel about like skinwalkers? Because I have friends that live in Flagstaff that are
Okay, yeah.
that are native, and they were like, they get mad at me when I bring it up. So I
Oh,
try not to
really?
bring it up around them. Yeah, I've done videos on it.
Right.
I've had people send in videos that I've put on the show, and I'm like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
so this is crazy. But how do you like? Because it does seem like they could be paranormal, not necessarily like a cryptid. But like, what are your
Right.
thoughts?
Yeah,
on
I
that?
would agree. It's kind of like the shapes it takes and the transforming that it does makes it be like, all right, it's not just a straight animal. Like there is something
Right.
more paranormal involved. So it's the same thing. It could be something that we just don't know that has existed, and we just encounter it in small batches. And one thing too, and once again, bring it back perfectly, honestly, to our new episode of the Lake Mead special. We talked to workers, like park rangers, that would see, like a person running, and then they transform into a wolf, things like that. So it's like there's so many stories we've firsthand experienced from people that have witnessed this stuff. And during the Lake Mead investigation, we capture some stuff that, like, I hope you get to see it, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. Like, there's stuff where we're like, all right, that looks like something that could literally be like a skinwalker, shape-shifting creature of some sort. I think multiple times actually on that investigation, we have like a couple pieces of evidence that are just like, holy shit, like what is that?
I'm kind of living vicariously through you because you guys did the Pioneer Saloon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the owner of the Pioneer Saloon, I actually produce his show here.
Oh,
He
nice.
does a podcast. I'm bitch made when it comes to stuff like this. That's why
Right.
I do the podcast.
Yeah.
But him, another host that we have here who introduced us, he wants the three of us to the guy who has the ghost following him.
Okay, yeah.
He wants us all to do like a Disney Channel like super collab. We're like,
Gotcha.
it's the Jonas Brothers in Hannah Montana.
Oh my god!
He wants us to do that, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but
Right.
like I know content's gonna be, even if like nothing happens.
To like actually investigate.
Yeah, and like it would almost be living out like a kid dream. Like I
Yeah.
watched all these shows growing up
Yeah,
of people
totally.
doing that, but I'm still kind of like,
Yeah, it's definitely like it's. I mean, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I've done too much in a way.
Correct,
Where,
yeah.
like, and like people ask me like, how do I get into investigating? And like sometimes I'm just like, don't, like, just don't, like.
I've given that. They're
Yeah.
like, what do I do if I want to be a videographer, editor, and make good money? I'm like, well, first of all, you
Yeah.
said make good money.
Right.
We're already
Yeah, you're
past.
contradicting yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, for me though, I feel like it goes like the content's there. I talk about it all the time, so I feel like it would be
Yeah.
interesting to do. I think I would just like psych myself out and get too fucking
Right.
paranoid.
But at the same time, like I would say do it. Like we only live once. Like
Very
you're
true.
into it. You like the stories. You like so like having your own experience would be great. Like just I would say if you do it, like just go into it cautiously and get a taste. If you want to keep doing it, that's on you. But like there's nothing wrong with experiencing it at least, and just be aware of what you're getting into. I think Pioneer Saloon would actually be good because I don't think it was like overly like possessive kind of dark stuff, which is good.
Yeah, everything I've heard, because he had one of the episodes, his name is Old Man Liver, and he brought some guests on that are employees or you might have met, like I forgot their names, but there's like Dale, and there's the guy who they made Easy Pete from Fallout New
Okay.
Vegas based off of. They're like, yeah, I just see stuff walk by all the time, and I'm
Right.
like, you just nonchalantly just
Right.
see
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
walk.
Yeah, I've encountered a few people that there was I think it was in the episode. We did this house in Arizona where this guy was claiming that gray aliens would come to his house almost every night, abduct his wife. She would lift up off the bed. There was one time like he was like trying to grab her and they moved her all the way out of the house. They took her outside, was lifting her up the ship, and he got his like AK-47 and was just shooting at the ship. And
That I would have done
and
that.
they
That'd
dropped
have
the
been me.
wife. But he also claimed he killed 18 grays with a samurai sword in his bedroom.
I want to meet this guy. This guy sounds cool.
And I will give it to him. Like, we caught evidence in his house that was like, okay, like, I can't say he's making it up, because like we encountered some crazy stuff and got some crazy evidence. We didn't necessarily see like a full, I don't know. I think I did see a gray alien, honestly.
Wow.
But,
okay.
but not quite like he described, like the experiences, but like there was enough to be like, yeah, there's something here. But it was just like you were saying, it made me think of it was just how casual it was. Just like, oh yeah, like,
yeah, I went
Tuesday
first
night.
prestige on. So here's the real question. Did he let you hold the sword in the AK?
Yeah. Well, not the AK, but the sword.
Oh man.
The sword. Yeah.
I was gonna say, George, if I go to the Pioneer, should I go strapped or? I don't know if it's gonna help me.
Diamond camo only, brother.
Right?
Diamond camo.
The one thing that I thought was interesting too, and it was just the same thing, kind of, you never know, but we asked him like, well, what happens when you cut them? And he said they would like dissolve away. And then we were like, did you ever get anything? And he said he caught like there was like a piece of flesh one time that was left over. And he ended up sending that to a lab, and the results came back that it was like half plant cells and half plant and half animal. So it was like basically like an animal cell that was able to like basically convert sunlight. Like it had chlorophyll in an animal cell. And he had those like test results. Now, of course, the sample went missing.
Of course. Well, yeah, the government's not going to let you keep that.
But it was still interesting. And then even on that, we met a lady who came in and she was like, oh yeah, like I've been here. I witnessed, a spaceship come down from the cloud. And then, I was here with, I forget the names, but she like named some names. She's like, yeah, they're Romulans. And then we were doing this. And we were like, wait, hold on, wait, step back. Like,
they have a name?
Yeah. Like, wait, what is this? Like, oh yeah. Like, and then she basically told us that she was a member of the Intergalactic Council and that she was an Earth representative. So she knew like a lot of the other representatives.
Did you do like a background check on this lady? And, like make sure that like there isn't some mental health history going on here?
I mean, that's the thing. Like we're right back out 2 weeks later. So it was, we didn't. But it was that like so casual, like, oh yeah, we were doing this. And then she's like, oh yeah. And then I went outside and I saw the ship and then I put my sword up in the air and lightning shot out of it. And we're just like, oh, okay.
Excelsior.
And we're like, wait, hold
Excelsior.
on. But like, just like, just being like, oh yeah, this is what I bought at the grocery store yesterday. Like just so.
Yeah. It wasn't that big of a deal because,
this happens all the time.
Yeah. Like I wasn't going to miss Anthony Bourdain on the TV again. Right. Like I had to make sure I watched that.
I was like, all right, aliens, we got to wrap this up because Anthony Bourdain is coming on.
Modern Family starts at 8 p.m. and I'll be damned if I miss it again to these goddamn aliens.
No abductions this time.
Jay, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. This was
absolutely.
an incredible experience. It was super enlightening. Mm-hmm. George, are you any less of a skeptic now? George was like, "Don't put me on this show," because he's our resident.
That's
like
cool.
No,
skeptic.
I mean, you came in, you laid the base that I figured would be laid. And it's the same thing Austin always preaches. You just have to embrace everything with an open mind and. Yeah, no, I just like busting Austin's balls because
sure, man.
I'm an experienced person.
Yeah, I like skeptics. Like still, like in heart, I'm a skeptic. Like I still I approach everything, but there's still like no doubt about it. I've experienced enough. I've seen enough that there's so much more than just this.
Yeah, definitely. My first true experience was those serial killer dolls that were in this room.
Yeah,
and things were going bad at the studio.
We should talk because we talked about that before the show. So, as everybody knows, we had Matt Montague on from Dying to See Me, the crime scene cleaner, and he has dolls that he got from a serial killer's house, and he left them here.
Yeah.
And like the guy would like tattoo on him, like the killer would tattoo. Yeah, so they had like all these, they look like me.
Right.
And they were in the back. And then all of a sudden we just started having all these problems with episodes not having audio, episodes having cameras go out.
That's wild.
And then he took them back. All of a sudden the problem stopped.
I mean,
I knew I was in the, like, so everybody, a ton of people here, I'm torn. I try to get people to touch this because I bought it from Amazon. Like,
right, yeah. You can buy them at the kids.
Yeah, like
section.
It's from Hasbro. Like, how haunted could it be? And some of the interns are like, I'm not fucking touching that thing. Like, you couldn't get me.
Yeah, I don't know. This could be a long podcast, but I got plenty of Ouija board stories.
Oh my god. We'll have to bring you on for a part 2 in the future.
For sure.
But so you have a new season coming out on May 31st on Discovery Plus, correct?
Well, actually, yeah. So it's kind of crazy. There's 3 ways to watch now.
Oh wow.
New season starts May 31st. It's heading off with a 2-hour special on Lake Mead called Ghost Adventures Lake of Death. It will be airing live on Discovery Channel. So we're no longer on Travel Channel. We're going to the flagship channel, Discovery. It will also air on Discovery Plus, and then we're also airing on the new Max, which was formerly HBO Max.
Nice.
Right. So I'm going to try to get back into it. Like I said, I watched the first documentary and it scared the living shit out of me watching that brick fly across the room.
That was great.
I watched videos on people like trying to debunk it, but even then I was like, is that a wire? I don't think so.
Right,
in that room, like good luck setting up the...
Which was cool, just to add, like, the second time I went to Goldfield, my first episode ever was at Goldfield, but I was just doing sound. First time I got to go investigate, we caught a rock go flying by itself on camera. And that was like, I remember the next day we were all just like, we were sitting in the hotel, like watching the footage over and over again. We're like, holy shit. Like, we're like, should we send this to the news right now? And not even like, you know what I mean? Like, it was that like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And then we're like, no, we'll wait. We keep it.
Kind of hold it. You can't blow your load right off the rip.
But it was tempting. It was like, oh my God, did we just throw this out there like right now? But yeah, that Goldfield never disappoints.
Well, Jay, thank you again so much. Is there anything you want to say to the fans that are watching?
No, I mean, just thanks to everybody, like we feel like you guys are with us. Like when we do this, it's been a long run and we're still going, and, it's amazing to have you guys still with us, and you guys keep growing as well, which is unbelievable, and very humbled and honored. So thanks to everybody.